All right, good morning, everyone. Bob, you mind grabbing the door real quick? Thank you. All right, 11 a.m. It is Friday, April 4th, and we're picking up a continuation of work on H233, an act relating to the requirements for state-funded grants. And we have folks from the RPCs here with us to offer testimony and input from their perspective. Gentlemen, how are you?
Fine, thank you very much for having us. My name is Peter Gregory, Director of Two Rivers Adequachi Regional Commission, one of 11 RPCs. We're mostly in Windsor and Orange counties.
And Charlie Baker, the Executive Director of the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission.
So thanks again for the opportunity to come and talk about this bill. We were here maybe a week or 10 days ago. We did certainly watch some of the testimony early in this week by administration officials and appreciated Secretary Clark's testimony. Just wanted to reiterate a couple of points that are specific to regional planning commissions. We're a little bit different animals than one might suspect. We are political subdivisions of the state, much like municipalities. We are essentially government and are not vendors that might fall under Bulletin 3.5, although some state agencies occasionally will drift in that direction. So I think it's important for this committee and state government to remember our unique position in helping our communities and essentially being extensions of state agency staff in many cases. In my mind, that means that our work for state agencies for the state of Vermont on behalf of our communities is really more like an intergovernmental transfer, one that we should expedite, make clear and predictable and fast. As we all know, our communities are suffering in their capacity to deal with what's being thrown at them. The turmoil in Washington just adds uncertainty, time, delays. We need to do everything we can as a state to make things work as good as we possibly can. These issues that we're facing have actually been going on for decades. New state agency folks come and go. The education levels vary quite a bit. And we need to continue the education process of who we are, how we serve the state, how we partner with agencies. Because these delays have caused a lot of frustration on our part, certainly. And they actually do cost time and money for the state and for our communities. And again, even in good times, that's unacceptable. In these times, it's unconscionable. So appreciate the committee's taking up of this bill. We support the training the secretary mentioned that was needed to make sure different state agencies understand the relationships we have and what they should be doing to expedite the deployment of resources. VAPTA, our state association, actually hired a consultant from Washington DC who was an advisor to OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, who understood the CFRs and contracting extremely well. We hired him and brought him up to Vermont maybe 15 years ago at this point. Time flies. And we invited state agency secretaries and financial staff to attend. And we paid for that training. And it was really super helpful for RPC staff to hear the details, to ask questions, and for agency staff. For a couple of years, things went very well. But then again, people come and go. The bulletins that kind of guide the work of the state in contracting and grant making weren't modified to kind of lock in that education in those situations. So we kind of then fell back into the same kind of tension and fighting and confusion. So I think there are a few big issues that we see that the RPC see that this bill could address. One is additional clarity and direction to state government on using approved indirect rates for political subdivisions without question. Because we find that we sometimes have to debate that. You have state agencies that say, wow, your rate is really high. To me, that's a clue right away that they don't fully understand what goes into rate making and those costs. Number two, not requiring political subdivisions to bid on state work. But again, there'd be like intergovernmental transfers. This is the intent of the legislature. This is the intent of the agency. Why should they be asked to bid on this work as if we're providing metal pipe or some other tangible asset like that? And then I might suggest refocusing the working group and study group that's at the end of this bill to focus it more on a working group that AOA convenes with stakeholders to specifically identify clarity and changes in Bulletin 5. Even federal CFRs have changed since the last revision. The de minimis rate has gone from 10 to 15%. So there are a number of things that need to be changed anyway, but based on what the nonprofit community needs and what political subdivisions need, I think there's better clarity in direct rates and contracting and grant making. We would be very pleased to be part of that, to be a resource, because many of us have been dealing with these issues for a long time. And I think the agency secretary would find it useful. And I think once and for all, we can get a better understanding for all entities that provide services to Vermonters, and wrap it up into a new Bulletin 5. And that can happen much more quickly than anyone says it can, if there's a will. And I think there's certainly the need. So that's kind of my broad overview of this. I want to thank you for, things, and have Charlie kind of fill in the gaps and if necessary.
Yeah, I don't know. We, have looked at the language and have some like draft, track changes, strike through language if the committee's interested in seeing that. We'll provide that afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to email that to us, Rep. Nugent's the lead on this bill, like include myself and the top of the table members for now. And then we can have council take a peek at it just as because we have a lot of suggestive language coming in from people right now. So we're trying to take it all under consideration before we get to any amended language that we might start noodling. So all the ideas are welcome.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get that to you
Today, probably. Anyone for right now? So I mean, one of the overarching nexuses, this was like the payment delays and whatnot. Are you like, and forgive me if you spoke to this last time you folks were in, I just wanted to refresh that because that is the primary focus of this bill in its current form. Is that something that you're still finding to be a barrier at this point in time?
Speaking for myself, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the regional planning commissions do not find that to be a problem. I mean, in many cases, payments are made in less than 30 days, sometimes right about that point. And if it's longer, it might be because of questions on that piece. So that frankly is not a big issue for us.
All right, I just wanted to touch on that one month, sort of just driving version of it. And we're going to be taking a lot more testimony on the street about moving anything anytime soon. So should we decide to try and find a vehicle to attach to it or whatnot, it's not happening. So
Yeah, and the other, major issue I think in here is the indirect rate issue. Just to give you a little bit more background, because we have been working on this for a long time, as Peter said, and probably 10 years ago or so, we entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Agency of Transportation, the VTrans, to actually be kind of that responsible party at the state agency level to negotiate indirect rates with the RPCs. And so I say that for a couple of reasons. One, to point out like there is an example of an agency coming up with a methodology that they agreed to, with at least with us, and that same kind of idea could happen. I think I saw a reference in the bill to Agency of Human Services specifically. That same kind of methodology could happen at AHS and really, I think, be helpful to the nonprofit community. So just want to kind of point out that some of these things can be worked through. But Bulletin 5 is very vague about that issue. And, kind of makes a tangential reference to the idea that there could be some state negotiated rates, but it doesn't actually say that, and there's no process around it. So that's like one of the areas where Bulletin 5, we think could be really improved with, not a ton of effort, but just add some clarity about, what is the process to get a rate. And we actually have, we developed with the audit chief and VTrans kind of a little spreadsheet workbook. You know, there's like a specific methodology. We plug in our numbers and it spits out something that V-Trans is used to reviewing. And so I just submitted my indirect rate proposal. I say, my finance person submitted the indirect rate proposal to V-Trans. I think it was actually a week ago Friday. And, you know, because we're going through this consistent process, on Monday, they issued their approval. You know, and so it's not, you know, it's not a protracted negotiation. The negotiation is following the methodology and it allows V-Trans to turn it around quickly. And it's been really successful, I think, from our perspective, because going back 15, 20 years, we were in a period an environment of ambiguity because we didn't have a federal agency approved rate, and that has caused issues. And then, as Peter said, we have had issues, particularly in AHS where other agencies are not recognizing that rate because it's a state negotiated rate as opposed to a federally negotiated rate. So that's another aspect that really needs to be clarified. So anyway, we'll get that to you more specifically in writing.
That would be.
To answer any other questions that, I hope is that helpful to you, Representative?
I think so.
Yeah.
Right. I guess everybody seems to have a case of the Fridays. Okay. I mean, we do have a little bit of time on the clock. I see Emma here and a couple other people in the gallery. If anybody has anything to offer at this point in time, we do have a little bit of slotted schedule here we can utilize if anyone cares to chime in.
We apologize for going so quickly.
Never do that with government work. Okay. All right, wonderful. Well, if there's no comments from anyone else, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.